Commander Alara Vance stood on the observation deck of the USS Vigilance, gazing out at the stars that dotted the endless void. 50 years since humanity had ventured beyond their solar system, establishing the Terran Union across 6 star systems along the galactic rim. 50 years was nothing in cosmic terms, a mere blink in the grand pageant of galactic civilization. Most species took centuries to expand beyond their home systems. Humans, as always, were in a hurry. Another diplomatic broadcast going out. "Commander?" Lieutenant Rivera asked from behind her. Alara nodded without turning. "Full spectrum. All channels. All languages we've managed to translate. Location coordinates. Cultural database updates. Fleet movements. The works. Just like the last 50 transmissions," Rivera said, a hint of skepticism in his voice. "You ever wonder if we're being too forthcoming?" Now, Alara did turn, eyebrow raised. "Having doubts about transparency protocol?" "Not doubts exactly. Just—" Rivera struggled to find the right words. "The galaxy's been at relative peace for what, 3 centuries now? But history suggests peace is rarely permanent. Which is precisely why transparency matters," Alara replied, though the words felt rehearsed even to her own ears. "We broadcast everything, our strengths, our weaknesses, our intentions, because we have nothing to hide. The Admiral calls it diplomatic nakedness. Some would call it naivety," Rivera muttered. Alara couldn't entirely disagree. The Vigilance was one of humanity's diplomatic vessels, tasked with making contact with alien civilizations and establishing peaceful relations. Yet in her 15 years of service, Alara had seen enough to harbor her own private doubts about humanity's open-door policy. The ship's AI chimed softly. "Commander, incoming transmission from the Serene observation post, flagged as non-urgent commentary." "On screen," Alara commanded. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the elongated features of Ambassador Toll, the Serene representative who had been observing human expansion with increasing curiosity over the past decade. "Commander Vance," the alien diplomat said, mandibles clicking in what Alara had come to recognize as amusement. "I've just received your latest data packet. Most comprehensive, as always." "Ambassador Toll," Alara nodded respectfully. "Is there a problem with the transmission?" "No problem at all. It's just that most species don't typically broadcast the exact capabilities of their defensive systems, much less the precise coordinates of their homeworld and colony planets." Alara maintained her diplomatic smile. "The Terran Union believes in full transparency. We have nothing to hide from our galactic neighbors." "A fascinating approach." Toll's compound eyes glittered. "Though I should note that several of the, shall we say, less reputable powers have taken particular interest in your broadcasts." A flicker of concern crossed Alara's face before she could suppress it. "Which powers, specifically?" "The Katanaki Dominion, for one. The Umbukudo hierarchy for another. Groups with a history of opportunistic expansion." Alara felt a chill run down her spine, but kept her expression neutral. "We appreciate the information, Ambassador, but the Terran Union stands by its policy of open communication." "Of course." Toll's mandibles clicked again. "I merely thought you should know. The galaxy can be a dangerous place for the unwary." After the transmission ended, Rivera cleared his throat. "Commander?" "Log the conversation and forward it to Admiral Call," Alara said, her voice tight. "And prep the long-range sensors for a full sweep of the border regions." "You think the ambassador was warning us?" Alara turned back to the viewport, eyes fixed on the distant stars. "I think we're about to find out if transparency protocol was humanity's wisest or most foolish decision." 1 month later, the answer arrived in the form of 2,000 warships materializing at the edge of the Tau Ceti system, home to humanity's largest colony outside of Sol. "Katanaki signatures confirmed," Lieutenant Rivera reported, his voice steady despite the tension that filled the Vigilance's bridge. 2,000 vessels, minimum, reading energy signatures consistent with weapons charging. Alara gripped the command console, knuckles white. The Vigilance and its small squadron of 4 ships had been conducting routine diplomatic exercises when the alarm sounded. Now they faced an armada large enough to glass the entire colony in hours. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. "On screen," Alara ordered. The view screen filled with the image of a Katanaki warchief, the ridged carapace and multiple eye stalks, characteristic of their species. When it spoke, the translation software rendered the clicks and whistles into a flat, emotionless voice. "Terran vessels. I am Supreme Commander Krell of the Katanaki Dominion. Your broadcasts have been received and analyzed. Your technological level, while impressive for such a young species, poses no threat to our Dominion. Your military capabilities are insufficient. Your defenses are inadequate." Alara fought to keep her expression neutral. "This is Commander Alara Vance of the USS Vigilance. We are a diplomatic vessel of the Terran Union. We have no hostile intent toward the Katanaki Dominion or any galactic power." "Your intent is irrelevant," Krell replied. "The resources of your 6 systems will be claimed for the Dominion. Your population will be granted protectorate status in exchange for tribute and labor. Resistance would be futile and wasteful." Whispers and muttered curses rippled through the bridge crew. Alara silenced them with a gesture. "Supreme Commander, there must be some misunderstanding. The Terran Union seeks peaceful relations with all." "There is no misunderstanding," Krell interrupted. "You have broadcast your weaknesses to the galaxy. The Dominion has simply been the first to act upon this information. You have 6 planetary cycles to prepare your formal surrender. Any military resistance will result in the termination of your protectorate offer and the implementation of direct resource extraction protocols." The transmission cut off abruptly. For a long moment, silence reigned on the bridge. Then the tactical officer spoke up. "Commander, they've deployed forces in standard conquest formation. Ground troops are being shuttled to orbital positions. Conservative estimate puts their invasion force at 5 million combat-ready soldiers." Alara's mind raced. The entire Terran military numbered less than 1 million personnel spread across 6 systems. Even with automated defenses and civilian militias, they were outnumbered and outgunned. "Orders from Fleetcom. Commander," the communications officer reported, "all vessels are to stand down and maintain position. No provocative actions authorized." "Stand down," Rivera echoed in disbelief. "They're preparing a full-scale invasion." Alara held up a hand. "We follow orders, Lieutenant. Open a channel to Admiral Call." The grim face of Admiral Patel Call appeared on the screen. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper than Alara remembered from their last meeting. "Commander Vance, I assume you've received the stand-down order." "Yes, Admiral. May I ask?" "No, you may not." Call cut her off. "Not over open channels. The Vigilance and its squadron are to maintain position and continue normal diplomatic protocols. That's all I can say. Sir, with respect, the Katanaki have announced their intention to—" "I'm well aware of what they've announced, Commander." Something in Call's expression gave Alara pause. Was it amusement? "Trust me when I say that the situation is being handled at the highest levels. Call out." As the transmission ended, Alara found herself staring at the blank screen in confusion. "Commander?" Rivera prompted. Alara took a deep breath. "You heard the Admiral. We maintain position and continue normal operations. While an invasion fleet prepares to subjugate our colonies," Rivera's voice rose, "this is insanity." "Those are our orders, Lieutenant," Alara said firmly, though she shared his frustration. "All we can do now is wait." The waiting lasted exactly 7 days. For a week, the Katanaki fleet maintained position. occasionally sending small scout ships closer to the colony, but taking no aggressive action. On the seventh day, Alara was awakened by urgent alarms. "Report!" she demanded as she rushed onto the bridge, still securing her uniform. Rivera turned to her, his face pale. "Commander, the Katanaki fleet. It's gone." "Gone?" Alara repeated. "Did they jump out system?" "No, ma'am. No jump signatures detected. They just vanished." Alara stared at the tactical display, where 2,000 warships had loomed menacingly hours before. Now, there was nothing but empty space. "That's impossible," she muttered. 2,000 ships don't just disappear." "No debris field," the tactical officer reported. "No distress signals. No radiation signatures consistent with destruction. They're simply not there anymore." "Any communication from FleetCom?" "Just one message. Commander," Rivera said, bringing it up on the main screen. It reads, "Situation resolved. Resume normal operations." Alara read the message twice, unable to process what she was seeing. "That's it? Situation resolved?" "That's all we've received," Rivera confirmed. "What about the colony? Any reports from the surface?" "Nothing unusual. Commander, life goes on as normal. It's as if the Katanaki were never here." Alara sank into her command chair, mind racing. "Lieutenant, compile all sensor data from the past week. I want a complete analysis of every moment leading up to the fleet's disappearance." "Yes, Commander," Rivera said, then hesitated. "What do you think happened to them?" Alara shook her head slowly. "I have no idea, but I intend to find out." The answer, when it came 3 weeks later, was not from her superiors, but from the next invasion fleet. The Umbukudo hierarchy arrived with less fanfare, but greater numbers. Nearly 3,000 warships and 8 million troops, according to intelligence reports. Their demands were similar: surrender, submission, resource extraction. This time, Alara watched from a distance as the Vigilance had been reassigned to patrol the border of the Sol system. For 10 days, the Umbukudo fleet maintained position around humanity's colonies in the Epsilon Eridani system. Then, on the 11th day, half their fleet vanished. No explanation, no debris, no distress calls. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. The remaining Umbukudo ships panicked. Some attempted to flee, only to disappear mid-jump. Others launched premature attacks on human outposts, only to vanish before their weapons could discharge. Within hours, the entirety of the invasion force had disappeared without a trace. "It's happening again," Rivera said, reviewing the reports with Alara in her ready room. "Just like with the Katanaki." "Not exactly like the Katanaki," Alara pointed out. "This time it was gradual, ship by ship, rather than all at once. And the Umbukudo actually attacked, or tried to." "What does it mean?" Alara shook her head. "I don't know, but something tells me this isn't the end of it." She was right. Over the next 3 months, 6 more alien powers attempted raids or full-scale invasions of human territory. The Yorcha conglomerate, the Paxian Dominion, the Vrel hegemony, the Juxat coalition, the Orntai sovereignty, the Mabari Empire. All met the same fate. Ships disappeared, troops vanished, invasion fleets reduced to nothing without a shot being fired. At least, not one that anyone witnessed. Throughout it all, the Terran Union maintained its transparency protocol, broadcasting regular updates as if nothing unusual was occurring. The only acknowledgement of the failed invasions came in the form of a single, system-wide transmission, a high-resolution image of what appeared to be the shredded remains of a massive dreadnought, twisted and torn as if by some unimaginable force. The image was accompanied by a simple text message in all known galactic languages. "Last warning, stay out." The image was never officially attributed to any human authority, though rumors spread that it had originated from Admiral Call's office. "This is madness," Alara confided to Rivera during a rare moment of privacy. 8 invasion attempts, billions of alien troops, thousands of warships, all gone without explanation. And our leadership acts as if this is all according to plan. Maybe it is, Rivera suggested, his earlier skepticism now replaced by a sort of grim fascination. Think about it, Commander. All those broadcasts, all that information we've been sending out. What if it wasn't naivety? What if it was bait? Alara frowned. Bait? You think we've been deliberately inviting attacks? Not inviting, exactly. Testing, maybe. Seeing who would take the bait, who would reveal themselves as hostile. That would be incredibly risky. If whatever we're using to make these fleets disappear failed. But it hasn't failed, Rivera pointed out. 8 times now. It's worked perfectly. Alara fell silent, considering the implications. If Rivera was right, if the transparency protocol had been a deliberate strategy to draw out potential enemies, what did that say about humanity's true capabilities? What power did they possess that could make entire invasion fleets vanish without a trace? And perhaps more importantly, what did it say about the leaders who had implemented such a strategy, knowingly putting colonies and millions of lives at risk? The Vigilance was recalled to Earth for a strategic briefing 6 months after the first Katanaki incursion. Alara found herself in a secure conference room deep beneath the Terran Union headquarters in Geneva, surrounded by admirals, generals, and diplomatic officers from across human space. Admiral Call stood at the head of the table, his weathered face grave. For those of you who have been operating on the frontier, this briefing will serve to fill in some gaps in your understanding, he began. As you're all aware, the Terran Union has faced multiple attempted invasions over the past 6 months. All have been neutralized without casualties on our side. A murmur ran through the assembled officers. Alara caught fragments of whispered conversations. Cloaking technology. Some kind of weapon. Dimensional shift. Call raised a hand for silence. I know you all have questions. Some of you may even feel that you were left in the dark unnecessarily, placed at risk without proper information. His eyes met Alara's briefly. For that, I offer no apology. Operational security demanded compartmentalization. With respect, Admiral, a colonial general spoke up. My people were directly in the path of the Umbukudo fleet. If whatever countermeasure we have in place had failed, millions would have died. Don't we deserve to know what's protecting us? Cowell's expression hardened. You're about to find out. The galactic community has called for a summit. A show of force, they're calling it. The Amora Confederation, the Kokoi Empire, and the Harbinger Collective have formed a coalition. They're unveiling what they call the Eclipse Dreadnought, supposedly the most powerful warship ever constructed. A clear message to humanity. A message saying what exactly? Alara found herself asking. A message saying that they will not tolerate whatever power we possess, Call replied. A message saying that the next invasion won't fail. And how do we respond to this message? Another officer asked. A thin smile crossed Call's face. We've accepted their invitation to the unveiling ceremony. The Vigilance will represent human interests at this summit. Alara felt a chill run down her spine. Sir, the Vigilance is a diplomatic vessel. If this turns hostile, it won't turn hostile, Cowell assured her. At least, not for us. The briefing continued, but Alara barely heard the rest of it. Her mind was racing with implications and questions. What was humanity's secret weapon? Why had she and her crew been kept in the dark? And what did Call expect to happen at this summit? As the meeting adjourned, Cowell pulled her aside. Commander Vance, a word. Admiral, Alara acknowledged, her voice carefully neutral. I know you have reservations, Call said without preamble. You think we've been reckless, perhaps even arrogant. I think we've been playing with fire, sir. Whatever technology we're using to defend ourselves, We're antagonizing powerful enemies without fully informing our own people. Kal studied her for a long moment. Tell me, Commander, what do you know about human history, military history, specifically? The question caught her off guard. The standard curriculum, sir. Ancient conflicts, the world wars, the Cold War, the resource wars. And what lesson would you draw from that history? Alara considered. That humanity has always been its own worst enemy. Kal's laugh was short and harsh. A common interpretation, but not the one I'm looking for. Try again. She thought more carefully this time. That technological superiority isn't always decisive? That asymmetric warfare can overcome conventional advantages? Closer, Kal nodded. Throughout human history, there have been moments when one power possessed an overwhelming technological advantage. Gunpowder against swords, aircraft against ground troops, nuclear weapons against conventional forces. In each case, the lesser power had two choices: submission or deterrence. Deterrence through the threat of mutually assured destruction, Alara said. Beginning to understand? Like the nuclear standoff of the 20th century. Precisely. When we emerged into galactic society 50 years ago, we discovered we were technologically inferior to most established powers in conventional terms. Our ships were slower, our weapons less advanced, our numbers smaller, but we possessed one advantage they couldn't match. The disappearing fleets, Alara whispered. Whatever we're using to make them vanish. Kal's eyes glittered. The transparency protocol was never about naivety. Commander, it was about showing potential aggressors exactly what they stood to gain by conquering us, and what they stood to lose if they tried. But the risk was calculated, Kal finished for her. And now, at this summit, the calculation comes due. You'll understand when you see it. Dismissed. Commander. The summit took place in neutral space, at a massive space station constructed specifically for the occasion. The Eclipse dreadnought hung in space nearby, its massive form dwarfing the hundreds of ships gathered to witness its unveiling. Alara stood on the Vigilance's bridge, watching the proceedings on the main viewer. The dreadnought was truly impressive, 15 kilometers long, bristling with weapons. Its hull composed of materials rumored to be impervious to conventional attacks. The combined might of the three most powerful empires in the galaxy, built for one purpose: to counter whatever mysterious power humanity possessed. Quite a show of force, Rivera commented beside her. That's the point, Alara replied. They want us to be afraid. The ceremony was elaborate, with speeches from the leaders of each empire extolling the dreadnought's capabilities and issuing thinly veiled warnings about respecting galactic hierarchies. The Terran Union had been granted a speaking slot, but at the last minute, Admiral Kal had declined the invitation, sending only a brief message. The Terran Union appreciates the invitation and observes these proceedings with interest. The snub was deliberate and noticed. Murmurs spread through the assembled dignitaries. As the ceremony reached its climax, with the dreadnought powering up its main systems in a display of technological might, Alara's tactical officer suddenly stiffened. Commander, detecting an unscheduled ship arrival. Human signature. On screen, Alara ordered. The image shifted to show a small vessel emerging from jump space. It was unmistakably human in design, but of a class Alara didn't recognize. Obsolete-looking, almost primitive compared to the gleaming ships surrounding it. What the hell? Rivera muttered. That ship looks like it's from the early expansion era. Hailing the unidentified human vessel, the communications officer reported. No response. On the main screen, Alara watched as the mysterious ship approached the dreadnought. Alarms began to sound from the coalition fleet. They're targeting the human ship, the tactical officer reported. Weapons charging. Can we intervene? Alara asked urgently. Negative, Commander. We're too far away, and we've been ordered to maintain position. Alara watched helplessly as the situation unfolded. The coalition fleet began broadcasting warnings, ordering the human vessel to withdraw. The mysterious ship continued its approach, seemingly oblivious to the threats. And then, before any shots could be fired, the human ship disappeared. Cloaking technology? Rivera suggested. No known cloaking system can evade sensors that completely, the tactical officer replied, frantically scanning for any trace of the vessel. For a moment, nothing happened. The coalition leaders, visible on a secondary screen, conferred urgently with their military advisors. Then it began. A thin line of light, so bright it caused the view screen to automatically dim, appeared at one end of the Eclipse dreadnought. The line extended, lengthening until it ran the entire 15-kilometer length of the massive vessel. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then the dreadnought simply split in half. The cut was impossibly clean, as if a knife of pure energy had sliced through the supposedly impervious hull like paper. The two halves of the vessel began to drift apart, internal systems failing, atmosphere venting into space. But the light didn't stop there. It continued outward, extending in a straight line for kilometers beyond the dreadnought, cutting through at least a third of the assembled coalition fleet with the same terrible precision. Alara watched in horror and awe as ships were bisected with surgical precision, their hulls splitting open, spilling crew and equipment into the void. No explosions, no firefight, just the silent, inexorable passage of what looked like a 3-mile-long plasma knife wave, slicing through the pride of 3 empires as if they were made of tissue paper. "My God," Rivera whispered beside her. What? What are we seeing?" Alara couldn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, watching as the coalition fleet panicked, ships colliding in their desperate attempt to escape the path of the energy wave. The diplomatic channel erupted with screams, pleas for mercy, accusations of treachery. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the wave of light vanished. In its wake lay the ruined halves of the Eclipse dreadnought and dozens of coalition warships, their interiors exposed to space, survivors struggling in emergency suits. "Message incoming," the communications officer reported, voice shaking. It's from Admiral Call." "On screen," Alara managed, her own voice barely steady. Cowell's face appeared, his expression grim but satisfied. "Commander Vance, I trust the demonstration was clear enough." "Admiral, what did we just witness?" "The reason for transparency protocol," Call replied simply. "The reason 8 invasion fleets disappeared without a trace. The reason humanity can afford to be transparent about everything except this." "But what is it?" Alara pressed. Cowell's smile was thin. "That's still classified, Commander. Suffice to say, humanity developed certain defensive capabilities during our isolated development on Earth. Capabilities we hoped never to use, but prepared nonetheless." "That wasn't defense," Alara said, the words bursting from her before she could stop them. "That was an execution." "It was a demonstration," Call corrected her. "One that will ensure the galaxy understands exactly what happens when they threaten human worlds. One that will save billions of lives in the long run, both human and alien. By creating terror? By creating respect," Call countered. "The vigilance is being recalled to Earth immediately. There's going to be political fallout from this, and we need our diplomatic corps ready to manage it." Call out. As the Admiral's image faded, Alara turned to look at her bridge crew. Every face reflected the same mixture of awe, horror, and dawning realization that had settled in her own mind. Whatever humanity possessed, whatever terrible weapon could slice through the most powerful warship ever built as if it were nothing, had been the true message behind transparency protocol all along. Not, "We have nothing to hide," but rather, "We have nothing to fear." "Set course for Earth," she ordered quietly. "Maximum speed." As the Vigilance broke orbit and prepared for jump, Alara caught one last glimpse of the ruined dreadnought on the view screen, a monument to arrogance, now transformed into a monument to fear. The aftermath was both better and worse than Alara had anticipated. Better, because there were no immediate reprisals, no coalition fleet seeking revenge, no united alien front against humanity. The demonstration had been too effective, the message too clear. Worse, because the galaxy seemed to hold its collective breath, waiting to see what humanity would do with its terrible power. Political leaders across a dozen empires fell in the weeks following the incident, their populations demanding explanations for the failed invasions, for the provocations that had led to the destruction of the eclipsed dreadnought. Military commanders were court-martialed or executed, depending on their civilization's customs. More ominously, pirate bands and slave-taking operations that had preyed on the edges of human space were found destroyed, their bases reduced to radioactive ash, their fleets shattered. No warnings, no demands for surrender, just swift, silent annihilation. "It's sending a message," Rivera said as he and Alara reviewed reports in her office aboard the Vigilance, now stationed in Earth orbit. "Don't even think about taking advantage of the chaos." "It's excessive," Alara replied, troubled by the scope of the reprisals. "These weren't major powers, just opportunistic raiders." "That's the point," Rivera shrugged. "No exceptions, no matter how small the threat." 6 months after the incident, the Terran Union announced a policy shift. Transparency protocol would continue, but human borders would be closed to all but specifically invited guests. Cultural exchange would be permitted through designated stations at the edge of human space, but no alien vessels would be allowed deeper into Terran territory. To Alara's surprise, she was promoted to the Diplomatic Corps' leadership and assigned as ambassador to these cultural exchange stations. Her first official duty was to welcome a convoy of alien artists and scholars, the first non-human visitors permitted since the borders closed. Among them was Croc Cran, an alien artist whose work had become famous across the galaxy. Stylized depictions of human eyes, rendered in materials that captured something of their liquid depth and emotional expressiveness. In the aftermath of the Dreadnought incident, human features had become an obsession in alien art markets. Eyes, the structure of human musculature, even recordings of human laughter, all commanded astronomical prices as collectors and ordinary citizens alike sought to understand the species that had humbled 3 empires in a single stroke. "Ambassador Vance," Croc Cran greeted her, his translator rendering his vibrating membrane sounds into smooth, accentless English. "An honor to meet you at last." "The honor is mine," Alara replied, studying the alien's work displayed on the station's walls. "Your interpretations of human features are remarkable." "I merely capture what fascinates us all," the artist said. "The paradox of your species, so physically fragile, yet wielding such unimaginable power, so emotionally transparent, yet harboring such carefully guarded secrets." Alara considered this. "Is that how the galaxy sees us now? As a paradox?" "As a terror and a fascination," Croc Cran corrected. "The species that broadcasts its home coordinates to potential invaders, then makes those invaders vanish without a trace. The diplomats who speak of peace while wielding weapons that can cut dreadnoughts in half." "And yet you came here," Alara observed. "You and your fellow artists. Aren't you afraid?" The aliens' breathing membranes fluttered in what Alara had learned was their equivalent of laughter. "Terrified and captivated in equal measure, Ambassador, just like everyone else in the galaxy." The conversation reminded Alara of her first discussion with Lieutenant Rivera, all those months ago on the Vigilance's observation deck. How naive she had been, worrying about humanity's openness, never suspecting the steel hand within the velvet glove of transparency protocol. Later, alone in her quarters, Alara dictated a personal log entry. The galaxy has learned what happens when humanity is threatened. They've seen the consequence of mistaking transparency for weakness. But I find myself wondering about the cost of such a lesson. The Terran Union has guaranteed its security, perhaps for centuries to come. No rational power would dare challenge us now. Yet in doing so, we've traded one form of isolation for another. No longer the physical isolation of our pre-expansion era, but the isolation of fear. Aliens approach us now with caution, bordering on reverence. They study us, collect our art, mimic our forms, but always at a distance, always with the memory of the eclipsed dreadnought hanging between us. Admiral Call calls it respect. Perhaps he's right. Perhaps in time, fear will fade and true collaboration will be possible. The artists and scholars arriving at our borders suggest that curiosity may eventually overcome terror. But I can't help wondering if we've merely replaced one barrier with another. We stepped onto the galactic stage broadcasting everything about ourselves except the one thing that mattered most. Now that secret is out. Not the technical details, but the awesome reality of its power. And I'm not sure if the revelation has brought us closer to our galactic neighbors or pushed us further apart. In the end, perhaps that's the true lesson of transparency protocol. Not that openness is a weakness or a strength, but that even in our most honest moments, we all keep secrets. Even in our most transparent communications, we all maintain our mysteries. Humanity warned them. They didn't listen. And now the galaxy will never look at us the same way again. Alara closed her log and walked to the viewport of her quarters, gazing out at the stars. The same stars she had contemplated from the Vigilance's observation deck a year ago, when humanity's place in the galaxy had seemed so uncertain, so fragile. Now those stars looked different. Not just points of light, but outposts of civilizations that whispered humanity's name with fear and fascination. Worlds where artists crafted replicas of human eyes, where children learned Earth's coordinates as a warning rather than an invitation, where military academies studied the dissection of the eclipsed dreadnought as the ultimate lesson in hubris. Humanity had humiliated the galaxy. But in that humiliation lay the seeds of something new, not conquest, not subjugation, but a wary respect that might, with time and care, blossom into genuine understanding. Alara placed her palm against the cool glass of the viewport and made a silent promise to herself. Whatever power humanity wielded, whatever weapon had cleaved the dreadnought in half, she would work to ensure it remained a deterrent, never a conquest, a shield, not a sword. The stars gazed back, impassive and eternal. Somewhere out there, alien eyes were looking toward human space, wondering what other secrets the transparent, forthcoming, terrifying humans might be keeping. And somewhere in that wondering lay the possibility of a future built not on fear, but on the mutual recognition that every species, no matter how open or how powerful, retained its mysteries. It was enough, Alara decided, to build upon. It had to be.